Let's go, guys. Places ASAP at start of project.
Like, man, I am not going out there and getting eaten.
Guys, we're here to prove that there is no monster. And P.S., we have a flawless track record.
You don't understand, Velma. I'm like the boy who cried wolf. I keep warning you, but like you won't believe me until I finally get eaten.
I don't think you guys were listening when I told you that story. Point is, being afraid is a waste of time. Monsters aren't real.
The gang's all here, they're on the case, and there's no ghost that they wouldn't face, 'cause they dig it, Scooby-Doo. Yeah, they dig it, Scooby-Doo.
Hey gang, and welcome to another all-new episode of a podcast named Scooby-Doo Extra, the show where I like to feature the added value content of the stuff that doesn't fit into the long-form interview format that I reserve for the podcast proper, the audio commentaries, the Blu-ray and DVD reviews, and the event-specific conversations that I have with Scooby-Doo creatives around the releases of various Scooby-related media. And as such, I am very pleased on this installment of the show to be presenting my conversation with Maxwell Atoms, who is the writer, producer, and director of the brand new direct-to-video Scooby-Doo film, Happy Halloween, Scooby-Doo, which dropped today, October 6th, on DVD and digital, although it has been available in some regions earlier, I think a couple weeks earlier, due to a promotion that Walmart kind of has going with Warner Brothers. They featured that with the previous movie as well, Return to Zombie Island, and it might have been there for Curse of the 13th Ghost as well, but I can't remember that far back right now. Anyways, I had a great time talking with Max. There are spoilers ahead if you haven't seen the film yet. I know a lot of you probably have, so that's cool. But if you're feeling a little fragile on the spoiler end, you might want to check the movie out before listening to the interview, just to be safe. Not much else to say here at the beginning other than there is a moment where Max and I are talking about the featured song in the film, which was composed by Andy Sturmer, the amazingly talented pop genius. Anyways, that song has been stuck in my head for like a week, and I couldn't quite remember the name of it. I was like, let's get together, or it's Look at Us Now. I was close. It was on the tip of our tongues, but we didn't quite get it. Just don't want anybody out there listening on their headphones or in their cars and like screaming at the speaker, "You morons, it's Look at Us Now. You just watched the movie." So there you go. Got that out of my system. And now I will leave you all to go forward to check out the conversation that I had with writer, producer, and director Maxwell Atoms. Enjoy. So I'm sitting here talking to the writer, producer, and director of the brand new, I guess almost released. It's been released in Walmart's, but it hasn't quite hit store shelves proper.
Walmart's in Europe, I think.
Yeah, the movie is Happy Halloween, Scooby-Doo, and the person in question is Maxwell Atoms. Max, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So you hadn't worked on Scooby really previous to this, but watching the movie, I just watched it last night, really enjoyed it.
Oh, great.
You clearly have an affection for these characters. Were you a fan prior to getting this gig? Is Scooby something that's kind of been in the background in your life at some point?
Yeah, definitely. From the days of Saturday morning cartoons up through now, it's always kind of been there. And as a kid, I love monsters, but they also just scared me, like stupid. So I think Scooby-Doo was sort of the place I could go and, watch spooky monsters, but know that they weren't going to get me. And it sort of, I guess, sparked my love of both monsters and science in a weird way.
And what was your entry point into the series? What was the going concern for Scooby at the time?
Oh, that was like the 80s. So it was probably the new Scooby-Doo movies mostly, I would think, at that point.
Fair enough. not having that previous connection, how did you get involved with the film?
Fortunately, I was working at Warner Brothers, which made it much easier. And my boss there was the same boss that I had when I was doing The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy at Cartoon Network. So we have a long history of just where it's easy to talk to each other, and there's, I guess, a bond of trust there. So at a certain point, he came to me and said, "Hey, we need a 50th anniversary. Would you like to do that?" And I was like, "Yeah." Of course I would.
I was wondering if it was something that you had to like pitch, or if
no, it was just sort of fortune in this case, I guess. I was absolutely thrilled to work on it, but usually these Scoobies, there's sort of a series of movies they'll do where they have the same people do it, or there's a series going on, and I just didn't see myself fitting into those, but I got lucky.
I was really pleased. It's kind of absurdist, and it's not your typical kind of Scooby-Doo mystery. And I felt that it kind of does sit more in that strange kind of Billy and Mandy world than kind of any other Scooby-Doo. But it walks this fine line where it's very meta and it's very absurdist, but it never quite tips in any direction. Like it's so well balanced that at no point does it take you out of the movie where you're like, oh, well, they're just referencing that old series, or that's something out of Predator, or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, I mean, I love sort of cultural references and Easter eggs and stuff like that, and I definitely love kind of pushing the boundaries on things. But since I do love the property so much, it's just sort of, I guess, walking that fine line where you want to keep things fresh and interesting, but you don't want to crack the frame, I guess.
Which has been done in the past, so kudos to you for not going there. I was curious, actually. A lot of the characterizations and some of the tone, it reminded me very much of a series like Be Cool, Scooby-Doo, which showed that you could kind of go into this zanier kind of humor and more absurdist Marx Brothers-y vein, and still remain true to the characters. And I wondered if either possibly seeing that showed you that, like, yeah, you can push it in this direction, or if that was any kind of influence on you, or if this was just your own sensibilities coming in.
I think a large part of it's, I guess, my sensibilities, but I did binge watch just about every Scooby thing I could get my hands on when I started writing this, and I couldn't watch all of every series, but I did catch a few episodes of Be Cool, Scooby-Doo, and I really did like what they did with their Daphne, so I sort of adopted pieces of their Daphne for my Daphne, and I guess with 50 years of history, I just kind of decided it was all true, and I was going to cherry pick what I wanted.
I think the Daphne was kind of where I zeroed in on it the most, because she was sort of alive in that way that Zach Moncrief and John Colton-Berry kind of had her in that Be Cool, Scooby-Doo. And as a fan of that show and that iteration of that character, I really, really appreciated it.
Yeah, I feel like it just adds an extra dimension to her. I feel like she should have gotten the short shrift on character stuff for quite a while, because she was just sort of the damsel in distress for a decade or two, and then she was just the butt kicker for another decade. But I feel like there's human emotion somewhere in there in between.
I mentioned the balance before, and I feel that kind of also played out with the characters, and it was almost impossible for me to zero in on what I thought might be kind of your favorite character to write, because they all seem to get their moments, and they all seem to have kind of a lot of heart and a lot of character, I guess, for lack of a better word. So I had to ask you, was there a particular character that you enjoyed writing more than others, or were you just having fun with like the whole gang?
I mean, the whole thing was a lot of fun. When I was sort of breaking it down early on, I was like, well, this is Velma's movie, so she's going to have the majority of the dialogue and the screen time probably, but everybody else was so fun that sort of midway through I was like, boy, I hope I get to do more of these someday, because it would be fun just to take kind of each one and explore each individual character a little more.
I definitely want to see more by you. I don't know if that's in the cards, but
no, I don't either.
I always like seeing this franchise has endured for half a century. Like, when something in pop culture becomes kind of iconic and gets to that point, you can take those characters or that concept in a lot of really weird, wild directions, and it doesn't like break the concept. Like you see, just looking at comic books, like Superman Red Sun. It's, well, what if Superman was landed in Russia and raised by a Russian family, and like that doesn't ruin Superman for everybody, or the different takes on Batman or whatever. And I feel like the Scooby characters are kind of like that, and I really enjoy when people take some chances with them, and I think that's why I keep mentioning Be Cool Scooby-Doo. Yeah, as long as you don't like break it.
Yeah.
It still feels very tied to like the original kind of Where Are You series and the heart and soul of those characters, but I'm not sure really where I was going with that, so I'll just segue.
That's all right. No, I'm with you. Like, I love the characters, and it's fun to see them do new things while still being themselves.
Because I really didn't know what to expect. I think with the direct-to-video movies, because they do adhere more to that sort of core idea, the Where Are You characters, the old models, you sort of expect more traditional mystery, just in a longer form. So to see something that was kind of taking some crazy chances was really refreshing, and I think that's part of why I enjoyed it so much. And genuine laughs, like some of the lines in the movie. I think the first one that really got me was when Elvira says, "Isn't that sweaty?" when they take off like the multiple masks on Jonathan Crane, and Daphne has some great lines. I wondered how much of that was the actors ad-libbing or bringing stuff to the character, and how much of that was actually on the page.
Most of it was on the page. I love to give the actors a chance to play and add their own stuff, and there's definitely some of that in there for everybody, I'm sure. I think Bill Nye probably had the bulk of the ad-libbing, weirdly, just because like, as much as I love science and as much research as I did to find out where Atlantis might be and how deep it might be, I was like, whatever you want to do, man, to correct this stuff, please do. So he would I would be using some terminology I learned in high school, and he'd be like, "Oh, well, we don't use that anymore, we use this," and I'd be like, "All right, sure."
Speaking of characters, there were a number of guest stars, which was kind of a new thing for the direct-to-video movies. They all came from kind of strange, disparate places, like Elvira, Bill Nye, and Scarecrow from DC Comics Batman. Was that first off, was that your idea?
Yeah, really, Elvira was the only one that was sort of attached because she had been in the previous one, but there was really no indication of what anybody else was planning to do with her. So I was just like, well, they know her, so she's part of the gang. I'm sorry, I've drifted off question already.
Not really. I just asked if the bringing in those three characters was your idea. Were you like, I want Bill Nye and I want the Scarecrow?
Yeah. I think at one point I even had 4 people maybe, and I pulled it back, but originally, like, all of the human Mystery Incorporated members sort of had their own foil, and it just kind of boiled down to these 3 guest stars. And I mean, the Scooby-Doo of my childhood was always like, the Three Stooges would show up, or Sonny and Cher, or Batman, and it was always sort of just like, sometimes it would be a real celebrity, and sometimes it would just be a real human being, and sometimes it would be a comic book character. So yeah, I felt like this was my one, probably my one Scooby-Doo. So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do everything I want to do.
You had a couple references in there to the old Scooby-Doo movies with the Ghosts of the Three Stooges, and then the Daphne doing Phyllis Diller. They went on 3 mysteries before they realized.
Oh yeah.
Considering how, like I said, these 3 characters, these guest stars, came from very like disparate sort of places that aren't really related. Was it difficult balancing them and blending them with kind of your take on Mystery Incorporated?
Not terribly. I don't really know why, but it was one of those things where I was excited to write it. I knew the broad strokes of what I wanted to do, and when I sat down, it just sort of started coming out.
So much of like just sitting down and watching this, like everything flows so easily, and that either means that everything was just firing on all cylinders and the process was great, or it means that you worked really, really, really hard to like get these things to lock into place together. So I had to figure out.
Even I don't know if I can remember what's what now.
Yeah, I guess I was listening to an interview with you on another podcast, and you had intimated that you had something mystery related that would be coming out next year. This would have been October of last year. So this was back a ways for you.
Yeah, this, I think we actually wrapped this up the post on this. It was right as the coronavirus lockdown was happening. So
It's like March.
yeah, March. So probably about a year before that we started.
Wow. I mean, I guess the animation process takes a while, but
Yeah.
is that strange to, I'm often curious when I'm talking to people who work in animation. People want to like talk about the thing that's happening now, but for you, it was like a long time ago.
Yeah, it is kind of weird. Like it's sort of cool in a way because you almost forget, and then you're like, oh, like okay, it's happening now. Like I forgot.
I suppose for you, it's a little different than like had you just been the writer, because you also produced and directed the film, so you probably stuck with the process a lot longer than somebody who had just wrote it would have been with it.
True. Yeah, if I'd written it, I would have been there for March 2019 or whatever, and then I would have been gone in March 2019.
So how did you swing, like the previous films, there's often a different director and a different writer. How did you get the whole gig? Producer, writer, and director.
I think it's just because I've done all of those jobs before, and I don't know, it probably saves money somewhere in there as well, but I'm not going to complain about it at that point.
Blending in the Scarecrow, who obviously is a DC character, bringing in somebody like Elvira or Bill Nye, obviously you're just going to whoever represents them and ask them, hey, do you want to be in a Scooby-Doo movie? But even though Warner's owns DC and they're kind of like entwined, they're still different entities. Is it a different process bringing in a comic book character than it is bringing in just an actor or public personality?
Yeah, a little bit, just because it's sort of another step or two, but it's all within, I guess, the greater umbrella of Warner Brothers, because they own it all. But since it's separate divisions, they all sort of have to agree that it's a good idea and sign off on it. So he was actually the one person I was most worried about not getting, just because I wasn't exactly sure what I would replace him with if I couldn't. But I just sort of wrote up a little synopsis of what his part would be in it, and they gave me the approval. And then when the script was done, they checked it out and they're like, yeah, great. So
I mean, there's a long-standing kind of relationship between Scooby-Doo and Batman. It's since the 70s they've
I
been
feel
interacting.
like they've encountered. I feel like anybody in in this movie they've all encountered Mystery Incorporated in some form or other before. So you can excuse the lack of introductions.
Speaking of encountering the gang before, we mentioned how Elvira had been in the previous direct-to-video film, and I wondered, this one very much also with the sheriff. I suppose for anybody who doesn't know by now, this is all spoilers. Watch the movie before listening to this. The sheriff is a character that's played through the previous two movies and kind of comes to, I guess, sort of a conclusion as the ending of this sort of 3-movie arc. And I wondered if that was something that you were keen on doing, that you wanted to keep this movie kind of in continuity with Return to Zombie Island and Curse of the 13th Ghost, or if that was something that was like, hey, yeah, we want you to do this movie, but it has to be in continuity. And then you had to figure out how to resolve those things.
I actually found out sort of late in the process that it was part of a trilogy. And the only part of the trilogy I really knew about was that the sheriff was supposed to be the villain. So I started working that into my drafts at some point, and all that binge watching of Scooby-Doo I had done, it hadn't actually included like the most recent 3 movies because they were the most recent 3 and they weren't just on the shelf at Warner Brothers. So I had to get those and watch them. But yeah, that's one thing that I feel a little bit bad about, that I wasn't, I guess, on top of that enough to really seal the deal between all 3 movies. But
I don't think you need to feel bad about it.
in retrospect, I think it all worked out. There's sort of a bit of a glitch where the Mystery Machine got destroyed at the end of the second movie, and then it's back to get destroyed again at the beginning of this one. But
that seems to be kind of a theme through the movies, that the Mystery Machine takes some serious punishment, which made me wonder the credit sequence with the black and white kind of Universal Monsters recreation of the Mystery Machine. Was that just something for fun, or were you intimating, hey, maybe there's another story here?
I just wanted to give them back the Mystery Machine. I actually wanted to give them back the Mystery Machine and show Crystal Cove being kind of rebuilt, but there wasn't time for it. So I just focused on the Mystery Machine, and people can take from that what they want, I guess. I guess it's a hybrid now.
You mentioned Crystal Cove, and that was another thing that I kind of pricked up my ears when it came up, because it being, of course, a major component of like the Mystery Incorporated show. And apparently it's also being used in the Daphne and Velma novels, the Scholastic books that are coming out.
Oh, cool.
Was Crystal Cove something that you were like told this is the location, or was that a choice for you?
No. When I just started watching stuff and researching, I was like, I thought they lived in a place called Coolsville, and I hadn't really even seen Mystery Incorporated. So, as a big part of my binge watch, I watched all of that. Like I really like that show, so I was like, well, yeah, I'm using Crystal Cove.
That's another example of a show that took some chances, but still stayed true.
Yeah, I felt like that's another one where they didn't break it, but they gave you so much more.
Yeah, very much so. We mentioned Easter eggs earlier. There's quite a few kind of meta-textual references in the film to other types of pop culture, other versions of Scooby-Doo. And you'd mentioned that you enjoy laying Easter eggs. Is that just something that you find really fun? And are there any Easter there that maybe aren't so obvious that you might be willing to share?
Probably yes on both of those. No, I do enjoy, the pop culture references, and I just feel like it's sort of the way people talk to each other today. Like that's one of the difficult things about writing a children's cartoon is like frequently in conversation with your friends or whatever, you'll be like, well, it's, you'll bring up something from Star Wars or whatever, something you've seen recently, but you can't do any of that like at all for the most part in other media because you're referring to, media you don't own. So it's I guess a way to just acknowledge that these things exist without directly referencing them in some ways. I feel like I've lost my track again. But for specific Easter eggs, the vast majority of them are really Scooby-Doo and Hanna-Barbera Easter eggs. I think some of the more noticeable ones, there is the Predator sequence, which, that's, in a way, these are also just ways to make myself laugh because there is sort of this technology versus just using your wits theme through the whole thing. And then you get to the end and I'm like, well, Fred has to figure this out without technology now. And I'm like, oh, it's Predator.
And having Daphne there eating the popcorn, that was beautiful.
Yeah, well, got to make a joke out of it.
But again, you put it out there and it was really obvious, but you kind of pushed it right to the edge and it didn't tip over. You handled it well. A lot of those things I wonder, because sometimes you'll have, somebody writes something and then it goes to like the board artists and the board thing in, or background writers or background painters will add something to it, just throwing in like little bits and bobs. But knowing that you wrote and directed, I'm assuming that when we see Frankenstein Jr., that's coming from you.
Yeah, that's coming from me. I mean, there's always going to be, other people making contributions that I will or won't be aware of. There's definitely been shows in the past where somebody would be like, hey, that was a sweet Chris Rock reference in this episode. And I was like, that's what that was?
The music was something that I also really enjoyed about the movie. I mean, I generally enjoy anything Andy Sturmer does, but I can't remember the name of the song. Let's Get Together or Let's...
Oh, now it's on the tip of my brain.
I can't remember the name. I'll remember it at some point when we're no longer talking.
Yeah.
But I really, really dig it. And I kind of wondered, are the songs that Andy contributes, is he writing them specifically for the films, or are they just kind of things he's got in the vault? And it's like, what kind of tone do you need? And it's like, oh, I'll pull this one out.
I would imagine he's probably got a vault full of stuff. But as far as I know, he at least, at the very least, tweaks everything. I think this was definitely written specifically for this movie. But yeah, I worked with him for 4 or 5 years on fish hooks at Disney, and he's got a lot of music in him.
He does. Most certainly does. This one actually really, I mean, he's got that classic indestructible pop sound that just he kind of puts into everything. But this,
yeah, we did have some back and forth on the phone where, like, I just wanted like the most 1969 non-Halloween song I could possibly get. It was just dumb, goo goo gaga candy lyrics, kind of. Just something fun and silly that Scooby and Shaggy could just ignore the disaster outside too.
That kind of explains maybe it very much, I was thinking of jellyfish when I was listening to it. I was like, this is one of the most jellyfish sounding things I've heard Andy do in a while. And if you were going for kind of a 1969 sound, that probably explains why it went that direction.
Yeah.
I got to talk to Andy sometime. That'd be great.
Yeah.
So we already talked if there's any more Scoob in the future for you. What was your favorite part of making the film?
That's a good question. There's all sorts of highlights. It was fun to write. It was fun just to get the madness done. The recordings were amazing. It was great to meet everybody. Yeah,
As director, did you work closely with the voice cast?
Yeah, I mean, I got to go to all the records, and if there, I had my Billy and Mandy voice director, Chris Salter, came back, and she'd worked on a bunch of Scooby-Doos in the past, so everybody kind of knew each other. But mostly I would sit back, and anytime there was something where I was like, oh no, it's more like this. But everybody's been doing this for so long that I don't know if they needed me there, but I was glad to be there.
Was there any, not conflict, but because the characters were pushed in sort of a slightly different kind of direction, did you get any notes from the cast, or was it something that they were maybe already kind of used to with stuff like SDMI and Be Cool?
I think most everybody was used to it. We had a little every now and then, like because both Matthew Lillard and Kate Micucci are kind of new to me. Like I would just be like, well, hey, is this something that your character would say? But yeah, for the most part, they just did it.
How was it finding the voices of these characters? Or were they just in your head after like binge watching all that Scooby-Doo?
Yeah, I think they were just in there. Maybe they've always been there. I don't know.
It seems like it's got this cosmic, maybe they've always been there.
Right. My inner Scooby. Oh, that was another one, was we did kind of go back to Scooby having a bit of a speech impediment, which I like, and we just kind of cleared that through Frank Welker.
Yeah, as I said before, like I really enjoyed the characterizations, and I do like the new show, the Scooby-Doo and Guess Who, but there is this constant like tug of war with people who pay attention to this show that like how much is Scooby talking and how much should he talk. And
it does seem weird to me to have Scooby talking. I haven't seen the new show, so I can't say, but like just long chunks of dialogue. I understand why they took away the speech impediment if you're going to have him do that, but it is strange to me.
Yeah, and this felt so classic. Like it gave me kind of a warm fuzzy feeling that I haven't had watching stuff from the franchise in a while. And it's cool to have something that sort of feels so familiar but also tastes so different. So I know that Dead Meat is no longer a going concern. That's correct?
It's still a concern, but it's not going.
It's not going anywhere. Okay.
Yeah.
So what is next for Maxwell Atoms? What have you been working on?
I don't know. Like basically, my year of quarantine has sort of started. I guess at the end of last year when Dead Meat sort of folded in on me, and I was like kind of miserable about that. So I sequestered myself away for a couple months, and then I was like, all right, after the new year, after my birthday, I'm getting out there and taking on the world. Never happened. So this year, I guess I finished up this Scooby. I did a little bit of work on the next Scooby, and that saw me to the end of my time at Warner Brothers. And since then, I've been coming up with new shows to pitch. I have a friend who convinced me to paint Warhammer figures, and I ain't got nothing better to do, so I've been doing that.
I know animation is kind of booming right now because it's one of the few parts of the entertainment industry where like people can actually work from home and just do everything, by Zoom or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just thought maybe might be like digitally getting out there doing some pitches or trying to hook up with some show. Or
yeah, I'm doing that. That's kind of where I am right now.
Cool.
Is just throwing shows at people.
Very cool. One question that I tend to ask at the end of all my conversations. Franchises lasted for, as I said, half a century. It's something everybody knows. Out of all the Hanna-Barbera properties, it wasn't the first, but it's definitely it's at the top of their head.
Mm-hmm.
What do you attribute to why this show has endured? Why this franchise continues on and these characters remain so beloved?
I think some of it has to do with the spooky factor. Like, I think, people do like an occasional scare, even little kids, and this is a good way for kids to get it. Probably one of the only good ways. And then the rest of it, I think, really does just come down to the characters. Like, they're each very distinct and really solid, and more or less what to expect out of them, but every now and then they can still surprise you.
Fair enough.
I don't know. I just hope it gives, not a lot of people are going to be getting out for Halloween this year, I think. So hopefully this
It's very true.
gives people a little taste of Halloween they might not get elsewhere.
This actually got me a little more in the Halloween spirit than, like, usually October is a big month for me.
Same here.
I've often done like the 31 days, right? Watching a horror movie every day, and just haven't been feeling it this year. And
I actually didn't realize it was October until today. But I watched High Rise last night, which I think might count.
I think it would. I think it would. It's kind of an unsettling film.
Keep the ball rolling, I guess.
But yeah, it definitely got me in more of a Halloween mood than I've been in a while. So I actually, in the middle of watching it, I was like, maybe I should watch another horror movie like really soon, because this is sparking the interest. So, all right. So that's all I got. Thank you so much, Max, for being on the show and talking about this new movie, which, as I've said, I've really enjoyed.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for having me.
Is there anywhere on social media you want people to find you?
I don't feel like I have a great social media presence right now. I'm on Facebook and Tumblr and Instagram. If you like pictures of dogs and succulents, Instagram's the place to be right now.
All right. You won't tell them where to find you, but if they find you,
yes,
they've earned the right.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
Yeah, it's probably better to do it that way.
Okay. Well, stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy the rest of your October, sir.
All right. You too. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
And there you have it. That concludes my conversation with writer, producer, and director of Happy Halloween Scooby-Doo, Maxwell Atoms. I really enjoyed talking with Max, and I hope you enjoyed this look at the brand new direct-to-video film, dropping today if you're listening to this on the night of the podcast release, or if you're in the far-flung future. Time has no meaning, so it doesn't matter. Let me know what you think of the film or this interview on social media. You can catch me on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, either at Scooby-Doo or a podcast named Scooby-Doo. There is the podcast page proper, ScoobyDooCast.com, and the WordPress blog, ScoobyDooCast.wordpress.com. If you're streaming or downloading the show off of Apple Podcasts, I'd appreciate a like and a review, and a follow, share, or subscribe on everything else would also be greatly appreciated. If this conversation sparked an interest in you to explore more of Max's catalog of work, I would highly recommend checking out The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy and Evil Con Carne, two shows that he created for Cartoon Network back in the day. He's also had his fingers in a number of projects, a number of animated series over the years. And as you can probably tell from my reaction in the conversation, I'm very pleased that he finally found his way around to contributing to Scooby-Doo in some way. I really appreciate his dark, absurdist humor, and I thought it was a really good fit for these characters and this world. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you guys so much for checking this out, for streaming or downloading, and for your continued support of the podcast. Stay healthy, stay safe, and stay tuned for more fun this October. Take care all, and we'll see you next time on a podcast named Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.